Dulce et decorum Est by Wilfred Owen. In this poem, the poet tries to explain the ill effects of war. He says that war brings nothing except destruction and only killings. No country so far has been able to get good out of wars. This is what is he trying to explain from this next writing. Now let's have a look at the summary points. Condemnation of war. In due course of this poem, the poet actually tries to condemn the wars. Wars happening between two different countries, two different nations, only brings about ruins, things, and brings about destruction and killings. Gas attack. The soldiers are trying to cough hard, their lungs are bleeding badly, trying to save themselves from the bomb shells put up under for them in gas attacks. A pitiable soldier. The poet tries to explain in his last segment of the poem that there is a pitiable soldier whose lungs are bleeding bad. He's coughing hard to escape the bombshells of gas, and he'll not stay alive to tell away the glorious victory that he has won over fighting in this war. Now let's have a look at the descriptive part. First stanza. The soldiers are physically and mentally exhausted. Using a simile, the soldiers are compared to beggars carrying their bags, cursing their plight. The soldiers are sick and crippled. The battle is about to end for the day, so the soldiers turn and begin to slog through the mud, walking back to the trenches. Many of the men walked sleeping. Some of the soldiers had lost their boots. However, they hobbled on with the bloody feet. Everyone was crippled without sight, exhausted and deaf to the endless bombs that were dropped behind them. In the first stanza, the poet is trying to explain the situation on the war field, wherein there is cursing implied, the soldiers are sick and crippled, and battle is about to end in a day or so. Soldiers begin to slog through the mud, walking back to the trenches. Soldiers are tired, slogged down, and are walking back to their trenches. And they are halfway sleepy as well. Second stanza. The narrator is a part of the experience. He too is a soldier. During World War I, the Germans began chemical warfare by dropping mustard gas on their enemies. It was deadly unless the soldier had a gas mask and was able to get it on his face immediately. The gas is detected. Someone tells them to get their masks on. The soldier fumbles around fitting the mask on just before the gas gets to him. Unfortunately, someone does not get his face covered, inhales the gas. His body is immediately devastated by the gas. He begins to yell, stumble, struggle as if he is on fire. The narrator can see the man through the fog and thick green light. Now in the second stanza, the narrator is trying to explain the situation of the war field where he has experienced things himself as well, as he was a soldier. He explains the era of World War I when Germans started pulling up a chemical warfare and had pulled up bombshells of mustard to destroy the anti-party soldiers. The soldiers have to face this, and if they do not have a face mask to cover up, they immediately start inhaling the gas. Their body starts giving up, feels devastated immediately. Moving on. The narrator, as though he were under green water, and see the man unable to breathe. The gas causes blisters which closes the airway when it is inhaled. The man felt as though he were drowning in his own blood. The adverse effects of this mustard gas is that it causes blisters which actually blocks the airways, and in which the man actually feels like he is drowning in his own blood. Third stanza, the narrator tells the reader that this is a flashback to a time during the war. He relieves this scene in his dreams or nightmares. He feels helpless to give aid to the man who is in dream, runs towards the narrator trying to talk, choking and strangling. Now in the third paragraph, the poet is trying to explain that the soldier was strangling, was choking, and yet he was running towards the author to run for help, and in his nightmares and dreams he could see the unrelieving pains and the scenarios. Fourth stanza. In his dream he sees again the wagon that the man's body was thrown into. He sees his face and his eyes rolled back in his head. His blood gurgled from his failed lungs. His lungs might have been cancerous. The body becomes a mass of blisters and horrid sores. Here is what the poem has been building towards. He is trying to explain in the last paragraph while moving on that this is the only thing that happens in life, that where he had to see a nightmare, he's reliving all those moments again and again, where the man's body, the wagon that the man's body was thrown into, he sees his face and his eyes rolled back and his lungs were bleeding bad. His lungs must have become cancerous, and this becomes a mass of big blisters. This is all what the poet tries to explain. There is one certain writing that says the subject is war and the pity of war. The poetry is in the pity. These are very strong lines which entirely explains the summary of this poem done by Wilfred Owen. That's all for the day. All the very best for your exams.